7. My name is Kenneth Lukwagandason, your host, and today we'll be looking at Parliament and its role to ensure a peaceful election process in our country. Do share with us via the WhatsApp line 0703 090 090. Time allowing, I'll open the phone lines for you to actually call in and contribute to this discussion. Well, we are all gearing towards the 2026 general election. This year, 2025, has been described as an election year, meaning that a lot of activities will be happening, not only to prepare for that election, but also to shape the other issues that will be happening around it. And so there are so many stakeholders who are required to play an active role, among which is Parliament. You have heard about people talking about issues of electoral reforms, issues of political reforms, among others. So this institution is required to reflect not only on the aspirations of the people, but also the numerous proposals that are being made by members of the public, and these are required to be placed into bills, and then the necessary reforms handled. But beyond that, there are also things that play out in the political environment where Parliament has a role to play. So today I'm speaking to one of the members of Parliament, the Honorable Asuman Basalirwa, who is from Bugiri Municipality, but he's also a president of the Justice Forum Party, one of the opposition political parties in our country. Good evening, Honorable Basalirwa. Thank you very much for joining us on this edition.
Yeah, thank you very
Spectrum.
much, Kenneth. I am glad to be back home after a long time, and I look forward to a very fruitful discussion.
Well, I don't want to ask you where you've been, but thank you very much for turning up.
Thank you very much.
Well, Honorable Basalirwa, you've been around for quite some time. Student politics, activism, political party leadership. Now you're in the politics of representation. From your experience, how would you describe the political environment in our country today?
Well, it remains volatile. It remains toxic. It is fragile. You don't see a lot of new things that are likely to happen. In fact, you only have to look back to what has been happening in the last, either 5, 10, 15, or 20 years to predict what's likely to happen. So if you ask me, realistically speaking, there is no change. It's the same cycle. You are going to, especially this year, you are going to see security agencies playing a very active role, not entirely in the positive sense, but more of a destructive sense. You are going to see delayed tabling of electoral reforms, if any, by the way. You are likely to see the same complaints and same concerns being raised in the courts of law prior and after the election. So I can describe both the present as uncertain. The future is bleak unless we make a fundamental departure from what has been happening. Otherwise, if you ask me, I don't think there is going to be any fundamental change in terms of the electoral environment, in terms of the campaigning environment, in terms of the role of the army, the police, and in the way the election will be conducted.
All right. What then explains that nature of explanation that you're giving? What do you think are the factors responsible for that situation you're describing? Bleak, worrisome?
Well, the regime. Because you know that Mr. Museveni, for example, when you look at what we call politics of pluralism, Mr. Museveni was actually compelled to open up political space. In fact, as you described me, I have been around for some time. During the referendum for change of political system, Mr. Museveni is on record for saying that each time he went to Europe, he was tired by the same question of a closed political system. You remember at that time, we had a law here called the Movement Act. And under the Movement Act, every adult Ugandan was a member of the movement. So we were all compelled by law to be in the movement. There was obviously pressure from within and without, and along the way there were changes. Article 269 of the Constitution was put aside. We went into a referendum which gave birth to multi-party politics. But at that time, and you must also recall that in 1986, when Mr. Museveni and the NRA had just come to power, their first law or enactment, if I can put it that way, was called Legal Notice Number 1 of 1986. Legal Notice Number 1, its effect was to ban all political activities in this country. So political parties went into limbo. So that explains, that explains the attitude this regime has had on political parties or political pluralism. When we came into multipartyism in 2005, what happened at that time was that the campaign to open up political space, Mr. Museveni is on record for saying, let's open up to the Jeko. That was the word he used. So it also tells you that even if the freeing or opening up of political space was not really done in good faith, and because it was not done in good faith, it is the reason why association of freedoms in this country are under challenge. It's the reason why opposition politicians are either in jail or out on police bail, on court bail. So it has to do with the nature and character of the people in the regime, the ruling government. They are not firm believers in what you call open politics or politics of pluralism. And that explains why, for example, Kenneth, what explanation would anybody give for the executive not tabling electoral reforms in time? What explanation? That only tells you that there are people, or the regime is interested in an inadequate legal electoral regime.
Maybe there's no need for electoral.
No, it is. Again, I will speak from experience. You know, in 2016, I was part of the legal team for Mr. Mama Mbabas in the Supreme Court. And we were not successful in the Supreme Court. But one of the things we secured, by the way, there were two issues that we secured from the Supreme Court for the good of this country. One, the Supreme Court established rules for what we call amicus curiae, friends of court. How do friends of court apply to court? How should they be treated? The Supreme Court set parameters for all courts. Before that, the procedure was not very clear. So we were able to achieve that in 2016, the Supreme Court. Number two, for the first time in the history of election petitions in 2016, we were able to have the Supreme Court make two pronouncements. Number one, pronouncement on specific areas that needed legislative attention. Specific. Number two, the Supreme Court also set guidelines, timelines within which to have the electoral reforms. In fact, if you read the 2016 judgment, Amama Mbabas versus Museveni and the Electoral Commission, the Supreme Court said that they were tired of entertaining same complaints. And because the complaints were recurrent, there was need to have legislative reform. And they even set timelines. That did not happen then. It has not happened now. Even if you brought electoral reforms now, and it's not late, although ideally, because you see, every election has experiences that we learn from. So at the end of every election, in my view, if you asked me, we would be bringing electoral reforms at the beginning, within the first year after the election.
From your experience, what needs to change looking at the electoral laws and the political environment?
And again,
what kind of reforms?
Again, I've been part and parcel of these processes. I'll begin with the campaign for free and fair elections. You recall we had that campaign. Opposition politicians and civil society. We moved around the country. We developed what was called the Citizens Compact. We even presented that Citizens Compact, I recall, the political party leaders at that time. We went to parliament. Myself, Laro Tunu, Dr. Kiza Besije, Ken Luchamuzi, and I think either the late Sebana Chizito or Norbert Mao. I don't recall exactly. We presented the Citizens Compact, an amalgamation of views we had gathered across the country. when we presented them before the Legal and Parliamentary Affairs Committee, they were even agreed upon in IPOD framework, you recall. When they came on the floor, they had even been drafted into bills. By then, the Honorable Elias Lukwago, current Road Mayor, was Shadow Attorney General. The Prime Minister then, Honorable Mama Mbabazi, said, these were corridor whispers. Discussions in IPOD don't bite Parliament or the NRM party. We lost an opportunity. But I can go through some of the salient issues that we were looking at that time, but which we still look at this time.
All right.
Number one, finality of election results. It is our contention, it was our contention then, and it's our contention now, that results announced at the polling station must be the final results. Must be the final results.
I thought they're always the final results.
No. Kenneth, you work for the media. Each time you air results here from polling stations, you put a disclaimer. Why do you put a disclaimer? Because the law is structured in such a manner that only what the chairperson electoral commission announces or the returning officer at the district level announces is the final. But that should not be the case. At a polling station, once it is declared that Basadro has these results, that should be the final. The declaration
isn't that the final? Because at that polling station, you get a declaration form,
yes, but
and you are able to track your results.
I'm asking you, why do you put disclaimers?
Why do you want one polling station to be the final? Yet there are a number of polling stations.
Final in that polling station.
Yeah.
Yes, final in that polling station.
And those results are normally reflected on the declaration form.
Some are, some are not. Haven't you had scenarios where somebody will tell you?
Is that a problem of the law?
Yes,
isn't it a problem of the political actors?
I'll tell you.
I'll tell you. Do
not
have representation.
No, even if they were
at
there,
the polling station.
I'll tell you that if that were the case, then you'll be able to announce. You'll be able to announce winners.
To declare.
Yes, to announce. To announce winners. Because if you had a tally center as Radio 1, and you are getting these final results from polling stations, you're able to announce a winner here. You try it, the station will be closed. And you know what has been happening. So we wanted specificity in the law to make that statement.
All right. Finality of the results.
Yes. Number two, the public media. Equal accessibility to the public media. And by public media, we mean media spaces where we all contribute taxes as Ugandans. So where a presidential candidate, for example, presidential candidates should have equal access to public media, equal. Now, I know, for example, that civil society has been tracking accessibility or space in public media between candidates of the ruling party and those of the opposition, and there is a complete disadvantage in terms of space. That we wanted it to be a matter of law. Number three, the role of incumbency. Incumbency. We have contended over time that a sitting president should, towards election, cede from the position so that he or she goes for the election.
Where have you seen that?
No, and that's the problem you have. Something does not become good. I mean, we can set a precedent. Who tells you that as Uganda we cannot begin and others imitate? Who? Okay? And you know, incumbency carries its own advantages. When we were in the Supreme Court in 2016, there was an order by the chief executive to distribute hose in the eastern parts of the country.
In the West Nile region.
West Nile. And you see, our argument was that was bribery. That was bribery. And you know, bribery in itself nullifies an election, even if it's one act of bribery. And that was our argument. But all those come with incumbency. So we were looking at the role or powers or limitations or constraints, the space, how much authority, how much privilege, or how many privilege should an incumbent have?
Well, they are going to tell you that the Constitution of Uganda does not envisage a gap, that kind of scenario where a presidency ceases to be and then another one is sworn in. You know, you cannot allow for a vacuum.
No, even if it is not ceasing, because you see that
who then takes charge
of
the affairs of the
The
state.
discussion I'm giving you, at another opportunity, I will expound. Because what I'm explaining to you are issues we have investigated thoroughly and broadly. And I can expound on every point. Even the scenario building. Yes, we built scenarios. So because we took time to even do comparative studies.
So we are going in 2026. You envisage a situation where President Yoweri Museveni resigns, does what? How do you cure that issue of the incumbency?
You see, you have a Chief Justice, for example.
Okay.
You can see the space for the Chief Justice. But if that becomes problematic, then you can agree on how much entitlement does an incumbent enjoy during presidential elections, for example. And you have a discussion around that. What should he or what shouldn't he control? That creates unfair advantage. So that is a discussion we have had.
All right.
Number 4, the role of the army in the entire, actually, the role of the army and the police or security agencies.
Well, we know their role.
It's no. Don't say
law
we know
and
their
order,
role.
beefing up security.
No. Don't say we know their role. You know that part of the complaints we've had, for example, even as matters of judicial attention, has been the abuse of the political space by security agencies, groups associated with the army. We have had the Kakoza Mutales. These are matters that have been before court. You have had the military shooting at people during elections. And the question has been, what is the role of the military, for example, in electoral processes? So those are issues we have discussed. The issue of electronic transfer of results. We needed to have a very clear legal regime that guides the electronic transfer of results. Even the issue of electronic voting. Kenneth, do you know, for example, when we were in the Supreme Court, we sought for an order to investigate the biometric machines
to validate
that had been procured. Because we wanted to find out how many Ugandans went through that system. And the then chairperson of the Electoral Commission said, these machines don't store data. So even if you wanted to find out how many people went through the electoral process, you couldn't. Because he came in the Supreme Court. I remember cross-examining him on that aspect. So the law is not very elaborate on electronic transfer of results. I recall when we raised the matter in the Supreme Court, the current Attorney General, who was one of Museveni's lawyers in 2016, resorted to the electronic, I think, Transfer Act, something like that, which was completely inapplicable. So you discover that the issues of electoral reforms across the divide are very valid and legitimate. So as I said, we had a citizens compact. We had discussed many of these issues in detail. And only if government of the day had listened to us, maybe, and Anderson, let me also make this very clear, that having electoral reforms per se may not be a guarantee for free and fair elections. Because you can have the laws, and then you can have forces that will disregard these laws, what we call impunity. But at least let's first have the laws in place. Then we discuss the next aspect of the disregard with reckless abandon, the disregard of the different pieces of legislation. So I want to argue that if you don't have a very elaborate legal regime, you are going to find it extremely difficult to engender an election that is free and fair. And that's one of the biggest challenges we face as a country.
Spectrum on Radio 1 FM 90. My guest this evening is the Honorable Asman Basalirwa, Bujiri Municipality MP, President of the Justice Forum Party. We are looking at the political environment, but also focusing clearly on what Parliament can do to be able to, address the issues that he has put across, among which is electoral reforms. You know, he has said that the political processes in Uganda remain a major issue of concern because it's not clearly stated. Now, Honorable Basalirwa, beyond the electoral laws and the regime that you talked about, there's also the issue of you, the political actors.
Yes.
There have been complaints that the quality of leadership in our country, you know, we do not have people who think about Uganda of tomorrow. And therefore, most of you are not really serious about doing what's right for this country. And that is across the aisle. The opposition, including even the ruling party. The verdict is out.
Well, are they going to have leaders from...
we are just waiting for conviction.
Are they going to have leaders from another planet? These leaders will always be elected from amongst us Ugandans. There is no option, there is no choice about it. So I think what we need to do, and you know of that common saying that society gets leaders they deserve, and leaders are always a mirror of the people they lead. Yes.
So as I look at you here, I'm looking at Bujiri Municipality.
Exactly. When you look at Mr. Museveni, you are looking at Ugandans. You are not going to get people from another planet. Those are the leaders you have. But I think the bigger responsibility, in my view, lies in the citizenry. And because once we enhance the level of civic consciousness, that in itself will transform into the type of leaders we want. Because Anderson, you guys, we are here in Kampala. You've given me opportunity, very rare opportunity to appear on your talk show. You need to go back on ground and engage the citizenry. What are their considerations? To them, who is a good MP? Who is a good MP? What is an MP supposed to do? And you tell me whether what MPs are doing is what they are supposed to do. First of all, you have a broken system. MPs have become shock absorbers. And across the divide, they have become shock absorbers. Yesterday, we were mourning our brother, the late Segrinya. The Segrinya established a community health facility. But this is Kampala. Why would an MP be establishing a community health facility in Kampala, the capital city? And people were confessing how they were getting health services from that facility.
A few kilometers from the National Referral Hospital.
Two. Mulago not very far, and Kawempe not very far. Now that speaks volumes. And you don't expect an MP to look on. So
is it looking on or taking advantage?
No, both. Okay? Look at during COVID here, you recall, the Ministry of Health had to make an appeal to MPs to avail their ambulances. So you get a salary as an MP, use part of that salary to buy an ambulance for your area because government has not provided the ambulance. And it's really a tricky situation. You'll demand for the ambulance it will not come. But the demand on the ground will be there. So the jury is out there on the MPs.
Okay.
It is also important for us to say it takes two to tango.
All right.
And we need to discuss it from that broad angle. What we as the Wananchi, we as the citizenry, what type of leaders do we want?
All right. Spectrum on Radio 1 FM 90. Let's go for a break now. But keep your comments coming via the WhatsApp line 0703 090 090. When we return, we'll take the ball to the Court of Parliament to understand what are they doing actually to address some of these issues that Honorable Basalirwa has spoken about. Stay tuned to Radio 1 FM 90. We continue after. Thank you very much for staying with us live on Spectrum. on Radio 1 FM 90. My guest, Honorable Asman Basalirwa, Bujiri Municipality MP, President of the Justice Forum Party. Today we are looking at what Parliament can do to sanitize the political environment in our country. And Honorable Basalirwa, let's begin from there. You complained about the delay to table bills by the executive. You've complained about a number of issues, the political environment, but we have the institution of Parliament where these discussions are supposed to be taken, and according to the rules, it's not only the executive that can table bills in the House, including it can be an individual MP, it can be you members of the opposition, but we have not seen any action on that front, save for the recent attempt by the Honorable Matthias Impuga, whose bills have not also been given, leeway. Could one say that maybe there's no general feeling in Parliament that this country actually needs electoral and political reforms?
First of all, your assertion that no action has been taken in Parliament is not entirely correct. No. Let me finish. I have given you the history of attempts at electoral reforms. The first attempt was made by Honorable Elias Lukwago when he was Shadow Attorney General.
Understood.
The second attempt
actually narrated well.
The second attempt was by Honorable Winfred Nwagaba. That was in the 10th Parliament.
Reinstating the presidential.
A couple of them.
Term limits.
Yes, we didn't get an opportunity. Now the Honorable Matthias Impuga has come up with a couple of them. But obviously you know that as a private member there are limitations. You cannot bring reforms as a private member that have an effect on the consolidated fund. The Constitution makes that a preserve of only the executive. But I think you're right. What I can only comment on that aspect is that there is no political will from the executive, from the regime in power, to bring electoral reforms. The political will is not there. As a matter of fact, if they had the political will, in 2016, they would have demonstrated that will. It didn't happen. If they had the political will, by now, we should have had the electoral reforms. They are not there. Now, have we been silent? No. Kenneth, myself, I am on record, together with many other MPs, for calling on the front bench, the executive, to ensure that these bills are brought in time. I sit on the Legal and Parliamentary Affairs Committee that processes most of these electoral bills. We have made a case for the agency to have these bills. But our case, our pleas have only been made by an intransigent regime, a regime that is completely disinterested. To them, as I told you, they benefit from an inadequate legal regime. They are disinterested. So it is true there is no political will from the existing government.
Is it about the existing government, or is it's also about the members of Parliament and the institution of Parliament itself?
No, but you see, as I told you...
How come we have not seen you, for instance, Honorable Basalirwa, tabling any bills? You talked about the Citizens Compact. Surely those bills are still alive and kicking in draft. Why don't you present them?
What I'm saying, that they have been, the attempts have been there. You will not, but if you are not accorded space, where are you going to pass them? But even that
you have not tried motions?
No, but all that, by the way, we've done. By the way, we
have not asked questions?
The questions have been asked, motions have been made. Let me tell you, Kenneth, this term we are in here, almost every session, we must have a discussion on the need for electoral reforms. If not at committee level, it's at the level of the whole House. And what response do we get from the Prime Minister or the front bench? Cabinet is in preparation. Cabinet is in preparation. Cabinet. The reason that prompted the Honorable Matthias Impuga to come up with a raft of reforms is because of the reluctance by the regime in power to bring reforms. So the noise has been there. The efforts have been there. But the political will is not there. Maybe this is the time that we all speak with a collective voice, both the Wananchi and the MPs to put pressure to bear on the executive to have these reforms. So it's not that no action has been made. That's not entirely correct. Maybe we should be louder than how we've been. I may agree, but it's not that we've been entirely, quiet. No. There has been noise, efforts have been made, questions have been asked. But as I said, because I may ask you, if government does not even take the guidance of the Supreme Court seriously, whom will they take seriously? The apex court, the Supreme Court.
So you have also resigned?
It's not a question of resignation. That's why, for example, on my part, I am the second at all the bills that have been granted. I mean, the bills by the Honorable Matthias Impuga. I am the second of those bills. Up to now, we are waiting for space, and once we are accorded the space, the bills will come.
All right. We have a number of questions that are coming in from the listeners, and I would like you to reflect on them and also respond to some of those. We have a comment that comes in from Julius Kapwepwe, listening in from here in Kampala. He says, is it an indictment to Parliament, including Haji Basalirwa and other MPs, that they pass budgets annually without the ambulances he's talking about, or is it political gymnastics? What support would he require from us, the Wananchi?
Noise. You remember this president of Gabon? Make some noise, make some noise, make some noise. For example, you recall last financial year, we did pass a budget. Not last financial year, this financial year. We did pass a budget that had a provision for ambulances. Okay? And you recall Mr. Museveni returned that budget. We opposed the return because in that budget we had included, we had made provisions for monies to procure ambulances for every constituency, by the way. Not even a district, every constituency. It was in that budget that Mr. Museveni returned. And when he returned it, I will speak for the opposition. We had a minority report to that budget. And even when Museveni returned it, our colleagues in the NRM supported the return by the president. We rejected it. We on record. The minority report, which was authored by our Shadow Minister for Finance, the Honorable Semuju Nganda, which we agreed upon in the Shadow Cabinet and the Opposition Caucus, we said we stand by that budget. So as you criticize us, there is also the politics of numbers. Okay? The politics of numbers. But the politics of numbers notwithstanding, the Wananchi, because each of us comes from a constituency, I only request the Wananchi to be tough on their MPs. MPs should be able to stand on the issues of the people, not their parties. Because that's also another challenge. There is an issue on the floor of the House, there is a party caucus somewhere, and it's taking a party position. Sometimes these party positions conflict with the views and aspirations of the people. And it's a very big challenge. So the Wananchi should begin asking the tough questions. You recall, I remember you here discussing the service award, and I kept asking. I even had a long discussion with you on phone. I kept asking. I wanted the Wananchi to ask their MPs individually. When the budget for the service award was being passed, where were you? I wanted the Wananchi, each person to ask their MPs. Now, if you don't put your MPs on tenterhooks, if you don't put MPs on pressure, if the MPs don't appreciate that the Wananchi follow these things, that is part of the laxity that you witness in Parliament. So, as I said, it takes two to tango.
All right. Another comment, Kenneth tell Honorable Basalirwa that the rhetoric of the army scaring away voters from casting their ballot is absolutely false. Every person who organizes a big event such as a wedding, introduction, even burial and church service invites police and the army for security. Why are people so afraid of the security agencies during elections? Why are they not afraid of them during such events? Who has ever feared and failed to attend a burial because of the presence of army or police? Baswalirwa and the opposition should stop explaining your failures by the presence of the army.
Who has been disrupting public meetings of the opposition? Who? Ask a person is called who? Or he didn't put a name?
He didn't leave a name behind.
Yes.
Unfortunately.
Who? We want to engage the Wananchi. The police and army come and stop the meetings. They come and disrupt the meetings. So you cannot say that the security agencies are not playing a role in undermining democratic processes in this country. It is a fact. It's a fact. You know Magala, who shot people at Bulange? You recall?
I do remember that story.
Exactly. Aren't people aware of that? Don't people recall Kalangal Action Plan by Major Roland Kakoza Mutale? And what I'm talking about is information on court record. On court record. The courts have even made comments on the role of the military in electoral processes. So it's not a statement I'm just making casually.
All right. When you speak to the police about them inviting the army into the election process, they'll tell you they do not have sufficient numbers. And from time to time, they have been telling Parliament to increase their budget so that they can recruit more security personnel, especially when we are heading into elections. You have not done the same.
That's
you have
also
not provided the resources.
No, that's not also correct. Let me tell you. The police can only blame the executive. And you see what people need to understand. A budget, generation of a budget, and you see the budgeting process changed. There is what we call the Public Finance Management Act that describes the budgeting process. The budgeting process ideally begins with what they call a budget framework paper. How is a budget framework paper generated? Accounting officers of every vote develop their budgetary needs. They submit it to the ministry that develops what we call one budget. So that budgetary framework paper is what is brought to Parliament for discussion. So often a time, the provisions relating to police, relating to the army and security agencies, as Parliament we support it. Sometimes we even make demands for increment. Now, who frustrates these increments? It is the executive. They say we have competing interests for this year. This is what we can afford. So as far as Parliament is concerned, we play our role. And you know, the chief finance minister in this country, what people should know, is the president. Constitutionally, the president is the chief finance minister. So where people are making a case for competing interests and they need to balance interests on the available resource envelope, sometimes your hands are tied. But there is no budget of the police that we have frustrated as Parliament. In fact, if you recall, if you've been following critically, budgets of security agencies is an area where as Parliament we always support 100%. So there must be no excuse for that. But you see, police must also be very honest, or whoever made that comment. Kenneth, police will tell you they don't have enough human resource to provide security at a venue. Okay? And when you insist on going ahead with the venue, you find hundreds deployed there. You write to police, you want to have a public meeting. Okay? And police will write back and say, we don't have sufficient human resource. And you insist on holding it, you'll find hundreds there. Those very same people they deploy to stop the meeting should always be the same people they should deploy to protect the meeting.
All right. Kenneth, tell Honorable Basalirwa that he has always been a realist, but today he's being wishful. Trump had to withstand legal battles amidst a harsh campaign, but still won. To wish for a free and fair election in Uganda is being naive. That's a comment from Stephen Rutaro.
Who arrested Trump? Which rally of Trump was tear gassed? Which supporters of Trump were killed?
Well, Trump had charges in court.
Yes.
There was a shooting at his rally, which was a direct attempt on his life.
The charges had no relationship whatsoever with the elections.
But they would soil him.
No, they had no relationship.
If they were in
And
the,
two,
if they were in
and
the
two,
if they were in the context of Uganda,
no, and
you
two,
would say political witch hunt.
no, and two, these are cases that had been built over time. In the case of Uganda, you are charged during election. In the course of electoral process, okay? In the course of electoral processes. So the bottlenecks and challenges that Trump faced cannot be compared to our situation here. Completely incomparable. Okay? Completely incomparable. So I really think that, as a country, we should all work towards having what we call political hygiene or electoral hygiene. What is undesirable, let's all condemn it. What is desirable, let's all welcome it as a country.
Another comment. Good evening, Kenneth. George from Bunga. Honorable man is struggling to explain himself with a lot of English, as if he does not know that, as if he lives on a different planet. Yet he knows the beneficiary of the scheme is the one who decides when, how, and when, how, and why Honorable Asman Basalirwa himself is part of the rubber stamp parliament. After passing, who will assent to those bills that you're talking about? That's a question that comes in from George.
Let's also help him.
Mm.
The president does not have a final say in assent. The constitution says once a law is sent to him twice and he does not assent to it, when it comes back to parliament will pass it. Okay? But I agree with him with the bigger point on our role as MPs. But you see, who makes this parliament to be composed of majority NRM? You cannot really blame me. If the majority of the MPs are NRM and they are going to sit in a caucus and take a decision, that's why I was appealing to the Wananchi. One of the things that is creating a very big challenge in that parliament is reconciling caucus interests with voters' interests. And the voters must be very tough on this. Once we go to ask for these votes, they should be able to ask, where is your preference? Where is your loyalty? Is it to your party or to us, the voters? Once the MPs discover or realize that power is within the people and not the party caucuses, MPs will act according to the wishes and aspirations of the people. But if the people leave the MPs to act on the whims of their caucuses, the situation is going to be completely different.
Well, Paul from Kampala Rising says, I agree our MPs don't represent the people, but partly they do the gymnastics to protect their jobs. They never do anything about the people until it's election time, when they can plead, beg, and do anything to retain or get back to power. Then we have another comment. Parliament has failed to monitor the implementation of the national budget. Roads are rotten, but Parliament is silent. Hospitals are sick, and Parliament is quiet. Parliament itself is very weak, absolutely weak. That's another rejoinder by Stephen Lutaro.
But that is also being unfair. We have not been silent on poor roads. Neither have we been silent on the poor health infrastructure. These are things that we've been talking about. I'll tell you, for example, in the opposition, we've even been having nationwide tours, visiting these facilities, visiting this infrastructure. And the commentator there should also appreciate the challenges we've been facing, to the extent that in some facilities we are being denied entry. You know that we've been denied entry to Lubowa. In some facilities, by the way, government officials were ordering people in government facilities not to allow us entry. In hospitals, in most of these other facilities. So it is not entirely correct that we've been quiet, that we've done nothing. But as I said, what we need to address is the issue of the numbers in that house, the democracy. Because, Kenneth, we will talk when somebody was accusing us of speaking a lot of English. Yes, we will talk, we will use the English. But where matters are decided on a vote, and this is where really I want to appeal to the country to look at who we are sending to the House. If we are sending people who are going to sit in a caucus and decide things, it will not matter how much noise Basalirwa makes. It will not matter. Yes, I'll go on record and I'll come here and say, by the way, Kenneth, I went on record. I opposed this. But if it has gone through, what you are going on record, how will you are going on record benefit the wananchi? So I think it's important for us to contextualize and also be very fair. Well, that's why I really love it where the speaker says, on this matter, let's vote by voice. You come on the microphone and say, I vote yes. You come on the microphone, you say, I vote no. So that the public cannot do collective judgment. The public should be able to say, at least we saw you on this matter, you stood with the people. That one on that matter, he didn't stand with the people. So that the judgment goes back to the people. Because we also had, and by the way, when we're in that parliament, we make appeals. We make appeals to colleagues. We say, colleagues, it is true you may have the numbers, you may be the majority, but the decision we are about to take is going to affect the people. Can you appeal to your conscience for the first time? Can you put your loyalty to the people and not your party? We make these passionate pleas. And we will continue to make them. I am not in any way saying we have resigned. No. We will continue to make them. We will continue to make the case for the people.
All right. Robert Basalirwa, we are coming close to the end of this show, and we'd like to hear your parting remarks, your promise, your pledge to the people of Uganda as a member of parliament as we go into these elections.
Well, I think what is important for me, my biggest appeal goes to the citizenry. The citizenry should hold their leaders accountable. And that must be a full-time job. The voters, the wananchi holding their leaders accountable must be a full-time job. When you relax in demanding for accountability from your leaders, they will also relax in delivery of their mandate. That must not be negotiated. There shouldn't be any holiday in demanding for accountability from the leadership. The people of Bugiri should be able to ask Basalirwa on a regular basis how he has represented them, how he has articulated his views, their views in parliament, how his views are in tandem or off tangent the views and aspirations of the people of Bugiri municipality that he represents. Now, if you leave your leaders to make decisions on their own, we will continue to make mistakes, and then the complaints will continue. So I would want to see a citizenry that demands accountability, that demands service delivery, that demands work on issues that affect them. Because you see, Simon, when I go to ask for votes, the wananchi should be able to ask me what I intend to do for them, and nothing else.
All right.
And for me, we will continue to lament. We will continue to pass judgment on parliament. Okay? But if we don't interest ourselves on how these MPs win their elections,
all right,
how they maintain themselves in parliament. So somebody made a comment that, you see, we are now struggling to get back to parliament. Why should you leave us? Why should that happen?
I'm afraid we have to bring this discussion to an end.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Honorable Basalirwa, for sparing time to be with us. And thank you very much, dear listener, for tuning in, but also contributing to this discussion. Your views helped us to shape the discussion here in studio. Until tomorrow, same time, another topic will be on air. Up next, we have the news in English with Miss Josephine Dagano. Thereafter, we'll have the Soul Train with BB Jr.